Hey guys, welcome to another session of Epic 7. It's been a while since I've made another video. It's going to be my initial thoughts for Abigail. I skipped MLK-Ron, but I did talk about Benimaru when he was still available. Hopefully I did that video justice because I think it turned out that he was exactly how I predicted in terms of the build. And so hopefully I'm on target with Abigail's thoughts as well, and hopefully you guys find this informative. And of course, as usual, I read all the comments that you guys post, so let me know what you guys think, like if it's contradictory to what I'm thinking or whatnot. So let's talk about her. So Abigail was shown in the montage video that was released like a couple weeks ago. I did a video on that doing a breakdown. At first I actually wasn't so interested in Abigail. I know that a lot of people thought it was ML Melissa or something like that, but I never thought it was. I just didn't care. I'm not really someone that really likes lollies, and I didn't know if she was a vampire specifically. I just thought that maybe she was in a company to like the new episode's boss, kind of like how Lilibet was with Strays and etc etc. But it turns out that I think she has a connection to the Melissa side story. So maybe we'll get like further lore into that vampire side. I think Melissa's her sister, from what I understood from the video. But with the full color, with the full animation and her kit, it definitely made me excited to actually even talk about her. Otherwise, again, like I said, I'm not attracted to lollies, or do I have some kind of like vampire fetish? I don't really care about that, but I think she's a nice addition since like Melissa's already a vampire that we have in the game and we can use her. It's nice to have her. Now I will say though, right off the bat, I definitely think that she has a better kit than Melissa, which is kind of unfortunate. They can't really think their way outside of Melissa's uniqueness as a DPS. But just because we have so many DPS right now, it's either you are better or you're worse. Like there's no in between almost. But Abigail is like a support, and she seems to be pretty good overall. So she's a fire warrior, as you can see on the screen there, and she's an Ares. So if you're familiar with Ares, Warriors was introduced with Edward Elric. So Edward was the first Ares warrior, so she will continue on the trend. As you can see, the speed of course is really good, 117 base, and the health and defense combo is very powerful. Crit rate is lacking, but she does have the self crit rate imprint, which I will discuss on I think in a bit in terms of builds, but it's better than not having it. The ER release is actually very good. This is something that I think will be very useful for her, since she does a lot of support for backline. Depending on what kind of comp you have decided on or in your draft, presuming that you use her in World Arena, which I think she will. I think she will be a very like core hero that would be used in World Arena. The imprint release is very nice. So the effect resistance, because she gives immortality buff, paired with, depending on your playstyle, maybe it just gives you enough effect resist total for your backliner, and the very fact that it's a 2-slot, increasing the effect resistance to 17.4% is very nice. Okay, and like I said, so if you are a whale and you triple lesser, you get lucky over time and you triple lesser, I think that both imprints are good. I'll have to definitely check out her modifiers in terms of her damage, but I think that realistically she's there to support and less about the damage. So if anything, she's built like damage. I think like you probably want to go like really bulky but with decent amount of damage to actually initiate the injury on her S3, and then from there on she's really carrying with CR boosting and her passive. So realistically, you're not really relying on her to be a damage dealer. So let's say for example a 1-for-1 like her versus a Robbie 1-on-1, a Robbie will probably win like 9, maybe even 10 times out of 10. But I think as a support, setting up for your actual damage dealer, she will have a really nice role. In terms of artifact, we'll talk about that when we finish talking about her kit. So Abigail's skill 3, Scarlet Garden, after dispelling all buffs from the enemy, attacks with a field of bloody thorns, inflicting injuries. Damage dealt increases proportional to the caster's max health. So she's an HP scaling bruiser. The severity of the injuries increases proportional to the damage dealt. Injuries decrease max health of the target by up to 25% every time this skill is used. So if you are trying to maximize her S3 damage, you know, you'd have to run into, you know, wherever the current meta is. So I'm only, as I'm making this recording, the current meta right now is either you're playing very aggressively, or you have aggressive bruisers like Karina, Last Rider Crow. So you kind of have to do, like, I would say, like, input her damage, so HP to crit rate and crit damage, and how much would it take to do the maximum amount of injury but not maximum amount of damage. This is just to optimize her, I think, for the rest of her skill set, which is to support the DPS, like I said. So in terms of, like, I would probably, you know, once her damage mods are out, once we have access to her kit in the damage calculators, I would probably, like, tune it where she has really good bulk, and then you start cranking up the crit damage and see how much damage do you need via the crit damage and the HP combined to be able to get up to that 25%, right? So what I'm basically saying is that, let's say, for example, you're taking her into a Proof of Valor A Ravi, right? You probably want to do some calculation on, like, a 28,000 HP A Ravi, let's say 1300, maybe 1400 defense on a Proof of Valor. How much damage would you need to do to maximize the injury on this one turn? Because the thing is, even though at the +4 you get a 1 turn cooldown, it is a 4-turn skill, but realistically, I think that the teams that she's going to enter will be that they're easy to kill. So I don't think she's going to be very good into, like, full-on standard comps where they have a healer, you have a healer. If that is the case, her injury will still be nice. 2 of her S3s will, you know, cap out all injury, assuming that you do the damage. But I think realistically, it's like, people who choose A Ravi, at least in this season, are generally going to play a bit more aggro. Or they're picking A Ravi late because they realize that you're just tanking down and you have very little damage and they can just injure you to death. And A Ravi, like I said, would kill really quick. So I think for her skill 3, that's what I would prioritize. Probably worth maxing because you're trying to do the injury damage. Probably worth maxing this to +7, which is a lot, to be honest. But I think it kind of makes sense in her kit that she doesn't prioritize any mola or any skill enhancement into other skills, but into this one, because it's more of like, well, it's kind of a one-off skill, but it could do a lot, right? So dispelling all the buffs, in my opinion, is a huge thing, including the injury, right? So like someone doing invincibility for 1 turn, you know, that gets dispelled, and so you can actually inflict the injury. Of course, there's a resistance check, but let's just count that out. Dispelling all buffs is very nice to have on the skill. It is a single target skill though, of course. Skill 3 animation. Like I said before, when I did my coverage on the montage video, the preview, kind of like the hype video, she was in like a black and white kind of storyboard animation phase. And at that time, you can already tell that she's a vampire, or sorry, like a demon lolly. All I remember was seeing the demon wings that she has on her. Oh, you can't see it in that image. But the full color, she looks pretty good, right? Like menacing, but then kind of cute. Like, she never breaks out from that cuteness. Where I think, like, Melissa, I think Melissa, to be honest, like, comparing the designs, Melissa feels a bit more awkward, except that Melissa has, like, more legs. Like, I think she's, like, almost barefoot or something. But, you know, instead of talking about feet and all that, my thoughts on the animation is okay. It's not as, like, cool as Melissa's, I think, but it definitely has a lot of, like I'm showing you 3 frames here, but they're all really nice rendered feature frames, which, in my assessment on S3 animations or ultimate animations, it's always really important for me to, like, kind of see a couple angles of the face. There's more than this, right? I only captured 3 of the images. There's like maybe 7 different angles or something they explored, and all of them are high detail, very nice. They really focused on her facial expression more than the actual effect of her skill, which a lot of they have different philosophies, but I won't get into that. Either way, it's overall, it's a really nice set of animation. I think that they put a lot of love into Abigail, let me put it this way, and I think that her skill set also shows that. This is why I'm going to recommend, even before finishing the analysis, recommend you pull her because I think that she's going to be actually really good. Skill 2, Blood Banquet. So at the start of the turn, curse the enemy with the highest attack for 1 turn. When the ally in the back row except the caster receives lethal damage, consumes 30% of the caster's current health to grant immortality and vampirism to the target for 1 turn. So your backliner can only be activated once every 5 turns. Now this effect does not stack with other passive effects of the same name. So I think this is a preemptive thing. That they usually add this, but I think this should be like there's no conflict here at the moment. I believe the other passives of the same name. Yeah, I don't think it conflicts with anything currently. I don't know what this is set up for like in the future. You know, if I'm missing something, let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Skill enhancement +1 though, so there's only 1 invested in here, and it will be a 4 turn cooldown. So as you can see, like combined with the S3, this would be 4 turn, this would be 4 turn. They're quite long, right? And in terms of like your DPS or whoever she's protecting that's gonna receive the immortality, it's only for 1 turn. So after, assuming they heal, so vampirism absorbs 30% of the damage dealt as health. This is the showcase that they have, right? So they have a hemophagy and immortal buff, and you can see that she cast a Blood Banquet, so receive 30% of the damage, right, of her current health. Okay, so it's not ratioed. So I'm assuming that it can actually kill her, like to a certain degree. Like if she is below 30%, it can actually wipe her out, so she'd be out. But then again, like I guess her job is done. Hopefully you drafted in a way, in World Arena, you drafted in a way that you could finish off your opponent by giving your backline DPS a second life, right? Which, this is the part where, like, if you're convinced that, no, she's not that good, I think it's like, let's say for example, like a Landy. She's on Guiding Light, right? She gets knocked out, and then if you kill your opponents, or you kill some AoE DPS, or they use their AoE on you and they have to wait for their full turn cycling, Landy can go back into Guiding Light after being full healed. You know what I mean? So like, I think it just depends on the comp you're running into, and then your backline DPS, whoever that is, and you're gonna have some really nice synergy. I guess I should just finish this thought before I continue, otherwise I might forget to bring it up. But in terms of like in a World Arena draft, right? So let's say for example on the left side, your team, you select a DJB, and let's say you have like FCC or something like that as your mitigation. Usually in slot 3 or 4, or maybe you already put like a Stenny or some kind of DPS, okay? Some kind of DPS already picked. You're probably gonna pick up another support and at least another DPS, right? A lot of times I feel like you have to pick 2 support and 3 DPS, or you know, 2 DPS and 1 support DPS, kind of like Sylvan Sage Vivian or something like that. Someone that can heal and be self-sustainable, and in other ways like that. With Abigail, you can use her as that support DPS, you know what I mean? Because giving a second life to the backline DPS means that technically you have 3 DPS. Like, the opponents would have to work their way much harder to kill off your backliner, right? So like, let's say for example, it was a Landy as an example again in the backline. They did an AoE, popped her out of Guiding Light, and they had to kill her, but they also have to strip the immortality and then also attack again. Not a lot of heroes can pull that off. And especially drafting in World Arena, that's going to be quite hard. So if Abigail is not early drafted, if she's late drafted, she could be very tricky, right? So sometimes people take out the support and then leave your DPS because it's squishy. Sometimes if you have both DPS, it's too threatening for them. And so I think Abigail ends up being that cog that is needed to kind of disrupt the opponent play. And one of the biggest things is like, maybe cleave, because so cleave is pretty tricky. Cleave is pretty tricky because they can end up just choosing some kind of strip. Cleavers usually have access to book, and a lot of heroes that can be DPS, they have strips and stuff like that. It might be trickier to bring her into cleave, but I think people pivoting into aggro will definitely have a harder time. Aggro is usually just as squishy as cleave, and so if they have trouble killing your backliner, and your backliner is like a carry DPS but squishy, like high damage DPS, like in this showcase, like a Remnant Violet, then they're gonna have a difficult time taking it out. Now I don't think that, you know, the comp on the right is a very good example of what will actually happen, but it's a pretty decent one. Okay, like I wouldn't even doubt that being drafted in a World Arena draft. But the thing is, like, to keep in mind that the curse effect goes on the highest attack. That means, like, you know, a lot of spec tennies, a lot of Aiden, they're the highest attack generally, so like, let's say 4k attack. So they'd have to compromise by lowering, let's say for example, spec tennies attack imprint to the release, so it, you know, makes another hero the highest attack or something. I feel like it's a nice design that they introduced this curse at the beginning that can actually basically, you could basically do the damage that you would do to like Belly in here, and then you like wipe out like a Stenny or something like that, you know what I mean? Now again, the amount of damage done does not reflect any quote-unquote standard builds, okay? Yeah, Epic 7 showcases often have been caught red-handed, but often are exaggerated to a certain degree. So realistically, again, we just have to kind of see what kind of damage dealer goes in the back there that can survive an extra turn, but just because of that extra turn, they can like wipe the whole team. In a better sense, it would be this: if you play as a cleaver, or you try to cleave and your opponent picks a Kayron and BBK, and you never drafted any type of strip like a Wander Silk or anything along those lines, or you have a Sea Lily's first pick or whatever, you will start panicking, right? It's just like, uh-oh, which immortal do I get rid of, right? So same thing applies with Abigail's skill, is that she makes any hero into a Kayron, right? So when pairing Abigail, it would definitely have to be like a DPS that they want to kill off ASAP, but if that DPS that you have in the backline does not die, it has enough momentum, it has enough power to actually kill the entire team, right? So it can't just be, let's say, I don't know what would be back there that wouldn't be super good, but let's say for example like a base speed SSB or something. Like SSB can do damage over time, but it's like, can she do enough, right? Like, can she do enough? I guess she could, again, depending on what you're bringing her into, but basically that's what you need to kind of figure out, right? So I think in this part of the video, Remnant Violet, because of Hemophagy, S3, he full healed because he's most likely on lifesteal set, but then he has vampirism. He full healed, killing the Bellion who is injured, all right, who had been stripped from Aiden's S3, the Invincible, and then Death broke for the flan, obviously, and then Riley kills and he full heals, and I think what's her name, Aiden dies in the showcase because of the curse, right? Because of the curse, or maybe that is the damage from the curse. Actually, I'm not quite sure actually, but either way, so it feels like there is more. Abigail seems to be good for a lot of the current kind of like meta DPS. And one of the things with the curse on first turn, you'd be like, well, Dragon, just put immunity on, right? And I definitely think, yeah, immunity's great. It would definitely block out the S2, but the issue is like, you know, are you going to farm immunity because of her? And if she already forces you to put immunity on or farm immunity, she's already really good, you know what I mean? So I think the very fact that she has the curse on the first turn, it goes to the highest attack, is very nice. Now I'm kind of curious though, because it is a debuff, I'm curious if it can resist, because it's at the start of the turn, right? And it's not at the start of the caster's turn, right? So they can't put up immunity beforehand, but I guess they can cleanse it. I guess that's another thing. They can cleanse it. If you hand guy, or maybe you have a Dilibet situationally someone is able to cleanse the curse off, then I guess there's really no threat. But I guess in the best case scenario is that it does keep a looming factor on your opponents. Like they'll be like, uh-oh, like my DPS is not on immunity, so they'll probably move around imprints to get their highest attacker. Let's say if it's Sylvan Sage Vivian and she is on immunity, then lucky you, right? But it's like that being there has to cause them to think a lot more. And on top of the fact that it's not just a curse that they're trying to avoid, they're trying to avoid, okay, what kind of backline DPS in the back, right? So I definitely think that don't think that I'm saying because of her all your DPS are gonna live, because like worst case scenario they could just ban the Abigail, right? But that's where I think she can become a very, very scary late pick or even middle pick. I would say late pick. I would say later pick. Later pick and could really probably solidify your draft. Now I think that once she's released, once people have experimented with her, we'll exactly know like what kind of combos really go with her, and then we'll have more insight on that. But the S1, let's talk about it. So ambush, attacks the enemy with the bloodied wings, increase the combat readiness of the caster by 15%, so every time it's used. When used on the caster's turn, has a 35% chance to activate Might as an extra effect. Damage dealt proportional to the caster's max health. Might increases combat readiness of all allies by 15%. It reminds me of kind of like Pirate Captain Flan. Pirate Captain Flan, because she's like a debuffer, is a very different story. But the very fact that she can do AOE, AOE push once every two turns, I think, and then like DDRs as two, like being team-wide push, and all that kind of stuff. Like it's very nice to have, especially when she's bulky, right? So it's the same with Pirate Captain Flan, same with Death Dealer Ray, and for her it can actually just come off of, let's say, a counter attack. So like Pirate Captain Flan, like unless you have like insane gear score, would probably not ever be on the counter set, but she has a 35% chance to do it every single time. So having her on counter set could actually be beneficial, but it could also be bad. All right, so Might is an extra skill that is a non-attack skill. So I do believe that this does trigger Politis, this does trigger Celine. So those type of heroes, so if they introduce more of those, like if you do a non-attack skill you get punished type of hero, then just keep in mind that that does do it. But in a comp like, you know, that I'm thinking of, this probably won't be a big issue. I don't think that because you pick Abigail they're going to choose Celine and then choose Politis, you know what I mean? And because people don't do that with Pirate Captain Flan, for one. But that's just how I see it. So 35% chance could merit a counter set. Otherwise, I'm not quite sure what kind of build. I mean, I think speed set would be just fine. Like, does she need immunity? I'm not quite sure. Like, does she need immunity? Maybe. I don't think that she'll need something like a pen. Again, depending on damage mod, but I don't think that her play is to do high damage. She's definitely going to be supporting your carry damage dealers. Yeah. So anyways, let's talk about the artifact and then we'll wrap up here. So Golden Rose, look at the max level here. When attacking, if the caster's health is 50% or more, increases damage dealt by 16%. And if the health is less than 50, recovers 30% of the damage dealt. So just keep this in mind, that if you're less than 50, you will lose the damage dealt, but you will recover 30% of the damage dealt. So you're, in a way, like you might think like, oh, this is like the Bruiser Sigurd Scythe, but it's not, it doesn't really function the way Sigurd Scythe does. Sigurd Scythe is much more healing for the heroes that would use it. Let's say, for example, like used to be Fire Ravi, what's it called, Edward right now is using it, ML Bologna right now is using it, and then ML Ken used to use it. So those heroes do benefit from scaling attack. Edward is a HP scaling hero, but he does have decent attack mods. Like, would this replace it? I don't think so. I feel like Edward's kit with Sigurd Scythe heals more if you keep it on Sigurd Scythe. Only testing will tell, but you just have to keep in mind that there is a a contradiction here, right? If your HP is more, you do more damage, but to recover the HP, you actually lose the 16% extra damage, right? Whereas Sacred Scythe is like, if your HP is lower than 50%, you increase your attack, right? So you increase your attack, and then you also heal X amount based on damage dealt. So Sacred Scythe actually has a better, like, it feels like it's a bit better, right? This would be like your HP pool would have to be very, very big to really benefit from it, because ideally you want to do a lot of damage over time, and then you want to keep your health 50% or above. And then if it is less, okay, it's time to save yourself. So let's put it on the let's recover some like health. Ideally, the hero using this would already have innate lifesteal. Either they're on lifesteal set, or could be like a Ravi, Fire Ravi, that type of hero. But I think that the artifact is interesting to keep. You could even use it as, I guess, like a portrait. Like so it's not really portrait, but like, you know, like a warrior that will benefit from, I don't know. Actually, I think Sacred Scythe, no matter what, to be honest, is a lot stronger. But there could be heroes that are released later that this will benefit more of. I don't think this will be her like artifact, to be honest. I'm not quite sure what I would put on my Abigail if I were to get her. But let me know, actually. You know, I'm kind of burnt out. It's a very, very long day for me, and just doing the recording as well. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. What kind of artifact would you put on her? Knowing that she might be a support. Again, we're waiting for the damage mods. I'll post it in the video description once I get them. But I don't foresee her damage mod will influence the way that I've described her probably to be used. So I would probably really focus on, yes, she's an HP scaling bruiser, but I would give her some good defense as well, because she, after the S3 turn, she's going to be a nice CR boosting hero, which means that there's a possibility your opponents are going to try to kill her. So I think mixing up the HP, the EHP with, like, you know, 20,000 HP, and then like try to hit a lot of defense, and then maybe a bit of crit rate, maybe a good bit of crit damage. I'm not quite sure yet. Maybe ER, who knows. So yeah, those are my thoughts for Abigail, but I do definitely think that she's a must pull. She has a unique skill set that no one currently has, and technically it would be like she is able to grant backline or K-Ron immortality, right? So like, it's just to keep that in mind. It's a unique skill, and I think that it will be very, very useful in this meta currently. Anyways, I'm gonna end this for the video recording. If you guys have Discord, check out the Discord server. Follow me on Twitter, subscribe to YouTube if you haven't. And as always, thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.